Okay, so we will just go through quickly about the mode of a group and then group data. So by definition, modes or mode is a value of observation having the highest frequency. So when we say highest frequency, it refers to us as the most repetition. So in a set of data, this will be the one with the highest frequency. So when we say modal class, this is the class with the highest frequency. So this is more on applicable when we deal with group data. Let's go to mode of a group data. So let's say this is these are the data that we collected from 12 students, and below are the results. So we have 12 students and these are the results. So if you can see here, the data, which is the number 9, okay, so we have 9 repeated 3 times. So it repeated the most. Okay, so other we have 7, but this is only twice. And I think there's no other number, although no other number in this data that repeats more than 9. So 9 is the mode since it has the highest frequency. Okay. So in a case that, let's say we have, okay, I will just try to change this to 7. Okay, so it says I will try to change it with a number or the data 7. So in this case, we actually have 2 modes. So that will be 9, okay, and 7. So because 9 appears 3 times, so it has the frequency of 3, and 7 also have appeared 3 times. So the frequency is also 3. So the modes, we have 2 modes, we have 9 and 7. So in case that I have another data that appears 3 times. Okay, so let's say I have changed this. Okay, I'll change this one to 15. Okay, so I will also change another one. Okay, I'll just make it with a different color. Okay, so in this case, 15 also appears 3 times. So I have 3 numbers or 3 data here that appears or have the same most frequency. Okay, so I have 7, 9, and 15. Okay, so in this case, there will be no mode. So we can only have, so we can only have 1 or 2 modes. So other than that, so if it's more than 2, so we will have no mode. Okay, so I'll just write no mode. Okay, so by the way, when we have 2 modes, it's called bimodal. Okay, so that's for ungroup data. So all you have to see or to look onto is the frequency of those given data. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, so let's have the mode of group data. So maybe you try to search or look onto the different videos in YouTube. Okay, so you might find different types of like formula for the mode of group data. So maybe you will find this one here and this one. So these two formulas are actually the same. So in this case, we just have them or written them in a different form. But actually, to tell you that these two are the same. Okay, so this, if ever you have this one in my left and this one on the right one, they are actually both the same. So, but they are written on a different way. Okay, so personally, I would like or I would prefer to use. Okay, so this one in here. So this formula here, which is a little bit easier to remember, and it's also more simplified, I guess. So personally, I would choose to use this one. Okay, but if ever you did or you do this on my left here, so it's still correct. Okay, so I'll just try to have both of them. So maybe I'll personally prefer this, but I will show you that they are actually the same. Okay, so by the way, we have all of the things here needed for your formula. So the lower boundary of your modal class. So we will talk about modal class after this. So we have H as your class width, D1 difference of frequency of the modal class and before the modal class. D2 is the difference between the modal class and after the modal class. So on the other hand, we have here also the definitions of all of the variables in here in our formula. Okay, so just moving forward. So F1, by the way, is the frequency of the modal class. F0 is before modal class. F2 is after modal class. So they are, there you go. So we have here an example. So I will show to you the example. So in trying to find our modal or mode of group data, we would need this basic information. So first is, of course, our class limits. Okay, so class boundaries. Um, do we need midpoint? So do we need midpoint? So actually, we won't need this. Okay, but we need, of course, our frequency. So these are actually the basic thing that you need when we try to find our mode, okay, for a group data. So this is how we do it. So going back to our formula, it always says that there is a modal class. There is a modal class here. So what is a modal class? So actually, modal class is just the class with the highest frequency. So we will be having the, we should be, we should find the highest frequency and we should identify which class is it. So in this case, looking at the frequency, we have the highest here, which is 13. So 13 as your highest frequency. So that is actually the class which has the limits for 59 to 68. So that is the very first, very important thing that you should do to find your mode. Okay, so this I actually already highlighted it here. So we will use the information that is found on our modal class. So that This is the only information that we need. Okay, so let's start. So I will just try to use first the formula that I prefer. Okay, so this is it. This is my answer. So our mode is 66.83. So again, I told you that the first thing to do is to identify your modal class, which is this one. Okay, so just try to go over the formula. Okay, so mode is equal to the lower boundary of the modal class. So just look on your modal class. You just try to concentrate on it. Okay, so the lower boundary. So if this is the boundaries, so this is what we call the lower boundary. So lower boundary. And the other one is actually the upper boundary. Okay, so the lower and the higher boundary or upper boundary. So we have 58.5. So in this case, I wrote here 58.5. Okay, so and next is we need to find D sub 1 or D1. Okay, so D1 is the mode of the modal class. Okay, so the modal class, the frequency of the modal class, which is 13. Okay, so you have here 13 minus the mode before the modal class or the frequency. I always say says the mode, but it's actually the frequency before the modal class. Okay, so that is 8. So our D sub 1 is equal to 5. D sub 2 is the frequency of our modal class minus the frequency after our modal class, which is just equal to 1. Okay, so let's just try to go over our formula and our solution. Okay, so here D sub 1, so I put 5 in here because D sub 1 is our 5. Okay, so here D sub 1 plus D sub 2, so that is 5. Okay, this one, and also plus 1, which is this one. Okay, so that is it. And finally, we have our H. And H is just our class width. So how to find your class width? It is just actually the interval, the size of your interval, which is 10. Okay, so you just count 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48. Okay, so your age is actually 10. The easier way to find our class width is it's actually the difference of the lower boundaries or lower limits. Okay, so you have, okay, so actually this should be class interval. Okay, so class intervals. So it's actually the difference between the lower boundaries. So let's say we have 49 minus 39, that is actually 10. Okay, so you can also do find your class width in that method. So 59 minus 49, that is 10. Okay, so or you can count from 39 to 48, start with 39, 39, 40 until 48. So that will be your last interval. Okay, so that is your class width. So we already had all of the values and just proceed with their computation. Okay, so we end up having 66.83. Okay, so that's it for the mode of our ungroup and group data.